Hey, it's Saeed. Thanks for joining me today. We're gonna go over how to make a kale and roasted beet salad today. This is one of my favorite salads. It's really easy to make and it actually doesn't take a lot of dry ingredients. So this is gonna be two parts. The first part, I'm just gonna go over the dry ingredients, which is gonna be the beets, the halved walnuts, and the goat cheese. This is just a plain goat cheese, as well as some kale. The first thing we're gonna have to do is we're gonna roast the beets, and then we're gonna candy the walnuts, and then we're gonna move on to making the dressing, and the dressing is gonna come at the end of the recipe. So we'll get to that. First thing I wanna do is get to the roasted beets though, so let's get right into that. You'll notice that I've cut the sprigs off the top of the beets, and I've cut the bottoms right off as well. So you'll notice that it's got that flat surface on the top and the bottom. It's really red. If you touch it, your finger's going to turn red. So just be careful with that. And I have a piece of aluminum foil under each beet. And what we're going to do is we're just going to top each beet with a little bit of olive oil. And I usually like to say about 75% of a beet per person. So we're doing about four people, 3 beets is about it. You can always go about a beet a person. Sometimes you'll get the beets that are a little bit bigger. Sometimes you get beets that are a little bit smaller. This one's a small beet, but these two are actually pretty normal sized. Someone might not be too happy in the group of 4 and not gonna get enough beets, but that's okay. I generally like a few more beets, but it's up to you. So first we'll just throw some olive oil on there, and then we want to sprinkle some salt over top, just seasoning them. Okay, and this is just normal table salt, and then some fresh ground black pepper. Okay. And then all we want to do is we want to close these off. Okay. Close them off. And then we're going to stick them in the oven at 400 degrees for about 50 minutes to about an hour. And the way you know it's done is you can just open up one of these. The aluminum foil won't get too hot anyways. You could just open it up and you could just stick your fork in it and just see if the fork easily injects into the beet, and that's how you know it's done. So when they are done, I'll show you a little bit of a demonstration, but for now, we're just gonna throw these into the oven and we'll let them cook for about 50 minutes to about an hour. You could just leave them alone for about 50 minutes. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be making for the salad is going to be the candied walnuts. And the way we make the candied walnuts, we're going to be using walnut halves. I have some fresh maple syrup, excuse the bottle, we just put it in a little bit of a water bottle because I had a huge can of it. And some coarse sea salt, and I actually just like to grind it down. You can use finer sea salt if you'd like. And this is actually really easy. We're gonna go over to the frying pan and I'll show you exactly how to make them. So the first thing I'm gonna have prepared is a piece of parchment paper. And the parchment paper will just be over a baking sheet. And the reason that we have parchment paper is because once these are candied, they're actually gonna be really sticky. So without actually having a piece of wax paper underneath, they're gonna stick to whatever we put them onto and it becomes really messy. So let's get right into it. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna turn our stove onto high, medium high. Okay, we just want to let this heat up a little bit. You know, if you just put your hand right over the frying pan and you start feeling that heat, it's hot enough. Usually if you're cooking any sort of meats or anything like that, you want to test it by just seeing if it sizzles. But since we're actually just toasting some walnuts, all it needs to be is just hot. And so once the walnuts are going to be done, it's going to give you that nice toasted fragrance of walnuts. And once you can actually smell that fragrance, that's when you're going to know that it's time to add the maple syrup. So we're going to get right into it. I'm already starting to feel a little bit of the heat. So I'm gonna add the walnuts right onto just like so. We're just gonna be toasting them. So no need for any oil, no need for any butter, anything of that sort. I like a lot of these. I like to just have a couple laying around so I can eat them as snacks because they're so tasty. So you know what? Screw it. Let's make them all. And now we just wait. We just wait for that smell to come. We're just going to be tossing them every 15 to 20 seconds. You just want to toss them. You don't want them to get burnt, but you want them to start browning just a little bit. Just enough so you start really smelling that fragrance. And that's when we're going to really turn down the heat and add on the maple syrup. We'll get to that shortly though. Okay, so the walnuts are starting to smell. You can tell they're even making a little bit of they're also making a little bit of noise because the oil is seeping out of the walnuts, and that means that they're going to start browning. You should really start being able to smell it. You don't want to burn them at all, so just keep flipping them. And as soon as you start getting that smell, you want to start adding the maple syrup. And I actually forgot to mention that you also need some black pepper for this. So very little, just some fresh ground black pepper, and you just start adding the maple syrup over top. Alright, and just evenly distribute. Just like so. Okay, just until the maple syrup evaporates from the bottom of the bowl. You want to quickly add some fresh ground sea salt. Okay, just enough to season. It's just the taste. And some fresh ground black pepper. Give it one next little toss. And then toss them right on to the parchment paper. Okay. Now as soon as they get onto the parchment paper, we're going to want to try to split them up as quick as possible. So what I like to do is I just take a fork and just move them around on the parchment paper. Try to split them up as much as possible because you don't want them sticking together. It's inevitable that some of them will, but the further they're spread apart, the less clumps you're going to have to break up later on. If you get a couple clumps, what's the big deal? You get a couple more walnuts in that bite. It's not the end of the world. We'll just let them sit until they get a little bit cool and they're not sticky anymore, and then we could toss them in our salad when we're ready to go. Okay, so I've just pulled the beets out of the oven. So they are going to be a little bit hot, but you should be able to pick them up. Now, the way you can tell that they're done is we're just going to unfold the aluminum foil, and we're going to test it by seeing how easily a fork can puncture the beet. So if there's no resistance at all, that's how you know that the beet's ready. So you'll notice like I'm barely pushing on that and it's pushing right through. So that's how we know that the beet's ready to go. So we'll just put these aside right now, let them cool off, and we'll chop them up when we're ready to put the salad together. So I'm just going to unfold all of these. And it's usually the best thing to do is to check the biggest beet, because if the biggest beet is done, obviously the smaller beets are going to be done after that. So just a little tip, because if you check the smallest beet, that doesn't necessarily mean that the larger beet is going to be finished on time. The way we make the salad dressing, we're going to have some extra virgin olive oil, apple cider vinegar, honey, Dijon mustard, balsamic vinegar, just a little bit of garlic, just to taste, and just a little bit of sea salt. So we'll start off by adding the balsamic vinegar, the apple cider vinegar. So about 3 teaspoons should do it. And you can just eye them. Okay. And then the honey, about 2 teaspoons. Okay, and you can leave some of that on the spoon. It's okay. It's gonna come off when we add some more liquid. So we're gonna add some balsamic vinegar. Okay, and that's just gonna be about half a tablespoon, or about a teaspoon. Oh, I put a little bit too much right there, but that's okay. It'll get spread around the salad. It doesn't have to be exact. We're cooking, we're not baking, so it's okay. And we're gonna add a little bit of a squeeze of salt, pinch of salt. We'll add a tiny bit of garlic just to give it a little bit of a kick. And to give it even more of a kick, we're gonna add some Dijon mustard. Just about half a teaspoon should do it. Now, we're gonna whisk it with a fork, and we're gonna slowly add about a quarter cup of oil, of the olive oil that is. So let me just put these spoons away. We'll mix this up just a little bit. Okay, and the reason we're gonna pour in the olive oil the way we're going to, slowly, is because we want the entire mixture to emulsify together. And so adding the oil slowly is gonna make sure that the entire mixture doesn't break, and at the same time it's gonna thicken up. So sometimes it might be difficult. You might want to get somebody to pour it out for you while you're doing so. I'm just going to pour it really, really, really slowly, and make sure that you're whisking while doing it. Vigorously, vigorously. Alright, till you get about the consistency that you want. If you notice that it's getting really oily, just stop with the oil, start mixing it, mix it hard. And if you start noticing that the oil is starting to get around the edges, then you don't have to put any more. The oil is just in there for a consistency purpose. It's gonna give it a light flavor, but most of the flavor is gonna be coming from the vinegars and the mustard, the garlic, the salt, etc. Once you have the dressing ready, you can set it aside. Wait till everything's cooled off. We have the we have the walnuts ready, we have the dressing ready, we have the beets ready, and we have the goat cheese. So the next thing we're gonna do is put it all together once the beets are actually cooled down. Catch you shortly. All right, so the beets have cooled. Now we're gonna put the entire salad together. So if you have a cutting board like mine, one of these plastic ones, if you're ever chopping, a little tip, wet a paper towel, put it underneath. Put it underneath the cutting board, and your cutting board won't move anymore when you're chopping. So we'll take the beets, we'll cut them up. This is when your hands are gonna get really red, so just a heads up, okay? Cut them down the middle. And then I like big beet pieces, so just cut them up in little half discs. Okay, and if the skin comes off, you could just put it aside. It's not a big deal if you want to eat the skin, but I'll just peel it off because it's really coming off right now anyways. Alright, now that we got the beets chopped, we got them thrown onto the salad. We're going to take the candied walnuts. Now they've been cooled, we can just scrape them right off the parchment paper, like so. Get your fingers a little dirty. Toss them right on top of the salad. And then we'll take our goat cheese, and I just peel it right off, and throw it right on top. Just little chunks all over the place. They're gonna get in with the salad because once we start tossing it, there's gonna be that great goat cheese flavor all over the place. It's gonna mix really nicely with the dressing, with the beet juice that's coming out of the hot beets, or the warm beets now. And now that we got all the ingredients inside the salad, we'll just give the dressing one quick whisk. And we'll pour it right over top. So I'm not going to use all of it. It seems to be a lot of dressing right now anyways. And just take a fork and a spoon and we'll just toss it in. Toss it around. Get that dressing, get the beets, get the cheese, and get those walnuts all over the place. Mix it in real nice. You want it all to come out in every single bite you have. And there you have it. The most amazing kale and roasted beet salad around.